Mark.
Hey, how are you? Hi.
Very good. Hello. Great that that's working out so easy. Nice.
How many are you?
There's 40 people in the room. I'll give you a quick pan of everybody. Starting, well.
Okay. Hello, hello, hello.
So Ben, you're on a big projector in the front, so although we're on a small laptop here. Oops.
My, I should have combed my hair.
Awesome. Yes,
So
I
tell
told
me about the class. What is this? Advanced cinematography? What is it?
it's I would say it's about intermediate, between beginner and intermediate. So people are learning how to light, and I just showed everybody your video on letter B light.
What
Exactly.
is this?
Light.
Does anybody know?
Light meter.
Light meter. Yeah, somebody said light meter. Yeah, spot meter. Perfect.
Good. You passed. You get an A.
So yeah, I told them that you would be able to answer questions that they have, and I'm sure there's many. So I'll just let people shout it out, and if you're cool with that.
Yeah, let's go.
Fantastic. Who is first question? Yes, how?
Rise of the Planet of the Apes, that second unit going around the house, how do cinematographers actually make it so steady instead of, is it a steady cam or was like, how do you go so like prolonged and steady and make so many frames?
Yeah. Well, the other question is how many sets was that?
Oh wow.
And it was 3 different sets, and it was the Steadicam was in the middle upstairs, and we used a 15-foot techno crane at the beginning, coming out of the bathroom and going into the kitchen, and then up around the spiral staircase, and then there's a match cut where the Steadicam takes over for that portion up there because that was actually on the 2nd floor, and that was really about the only thing we could rig up there. And then it takes over once again by a big techno crane, that takes us through the attic door and across a 35-foot long bedroom to the window. So it's 3 different pieces of film stitched together from 3 different sets, and it was smooth, and deliberately so.
So it was actually cut. There were cuts in there that we didn't see. Our eyes are not perceiving.
Right.
Samantha?
Is that something that's done a lot in filmmaking where they match cuts, and so like when I'm like, wow, that's one shot, it's not necessarily one shot?
You know who does it a lot is Robert Zemeckis. He likes doing shots like that, where you almost have to see the shot before you go, wait a minute, I got to see that again. There's something going on there. And the reason why I put it on my reel is because it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to figure out, and it involved destroying sets to allow for cranes to come into them, and then allow for what was done to lay boards for the dolly track, and then the people at Weta, which created Caesar down in New Zealand, had to reverse engineer the move of the ape to work with the camera move, because of course there's no ape in the shot, right? So it was a lot of fun. I have so much material now that I've ceased to update my reel, and if I'm up for a job, I'll just go in and cut something special for that particular job, because there's no one thing that I'm known for, and no one shot. I mean, the reel would be too long, and in fact, this one's too long as it is. But I haven't had time to go back into it. And sometimes I'm not even asked for a reel anymore, so.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Just from the shots from Poseidon, underwater, how do you kind of like prepare for an underwater shot like that, or how do you like
Well, the
that?
first thing you do is you get the best underwater camera operator that you can find, and in this case we had Pete Romano, who, look him up, Romano, on part of the crew. Now, that was real fire, and that was the real actor that did that. And what you don't see in a shot like that is how many safety divers are around him ready to jump in and help him if he has a problem, if he gets a cramp, or if he panics, or if the swim is just too long. Obviously, you don't want to breach reach the surface of the water where there's huge flames burning away. So, and the other idea is to bring in as much refuse as you can that makes it look like the ship is coming apart, yet it won't present a snagging opportunity for the swimmer to get caught on. So, you know, there isn't much more preparation other than the fact that we get lights in the tank. The special effects guy comes up with a way to burn flame on water, and we get the actor, in this case Josh Lucas, in shape and confident to make the swim. He only did it a couple of times, and he was very proud of that. So, does that answer your question? I mean, it's like any other shot when you're preparing a movie. You go through the logistics of it, the point of the shot, which is the most important thing, and do you have the budget to afford the resources to pull it off?
Yeah, I mean, do you light it from below or from above? How do you, like, do you bring lights underwater?
There were some lights underwater, and just enough so that you could we added some fills so you could actually tell that it was him. And they make underwater HMIs, and we had some orange gel on them to give it a sense of warm fill, and that was it. Basically, the flames did most of the work.
And my second question was around how old were you when you, I guess, were inspired to work professionally? And did you go to school, or did you just jump right into working and just worked your way up? Or what did you start as first to work your way up?
Well, I went to film school. I went to college in Montana. I'm in Los Angeles at the moment, but I live in Montana. And I graduated from college in 1977, and I had a job right away at a film lab in Seattle. So in those days, film school in a small state college wasn't really that great. I mean, they didn't have any grip equipment. They had these horrible old low light kits with just barn doors on them. The teachers didn't talk about diffusion. It was just, there was very little discussion about bounce light and controlling the light. But more importantly, the notion of lighting a movie based on the script, based on the words, wasn't even talked about either. So I would have to say it was more of a documentary kind of school. But what I did get from this college experience was this amazing appreciation for the medium, knowing that this is something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I knew that it was going to be a long slog, like start out at the bottom everywhere I went, and then work my way up. And I'm still as enthusiastic about shooting today, and I'm going to be 60 next year, as I was the first time I got behind a camera. And I mean that. And think of what I've seen. I've seen the beginning of color negative film that initially was 100 ASA, which was considered to be pretty fast, and that was 5247. I didn't have a thing to do with 5254, but the new higher speed negative film I saw, and then I've gone all the way through the whole evolution of digital technology and digital intermediates, and handled and photographed 65 millimeter film stock before. So there's been very little time to get bored with anything because the technology just has moved so fast in my generation.
Next question.
Yeah, do you think you could point to a single instance in your career where it really took off? Was there some big break moment, or did you gradually just get jobs that led to better jobs or whatever? I'm just curious about that process of actually making it.
Well, there's a flip side of that too, and that is mistakes that I've made that have hurt my career. And everybody makes them. But I'd say the movie that helped get me going as a second unit director of photography would have been In the Line of Fire, the Clint Eastwood Secret Service movie, where that was the first time where I'd stopped being in charge of the visual effects, although I was in that case, but I bartered that knowledge to create the second unit job. So that was my first credit as a DP on a movie. So that was a big leap forward and a very satisfying one. So those are the positives and the negatives. So what's the moral of that story? Please, you take every meeting, and it's good. You know, it's really good experience. Even if you go into it knowing that it's maybe a token meeting or you don't get off on the right foot, you get to practice speaking for yourself in front of people that can control the rest of your life through the award of one picture. So you gotta go try that. I mean, there's one of these days you're gonna wake up and you're not gonna have butterflies anymore about anything. And that's a really bad feeling. And do you know what I get the most butterflies now that I just love so much is when I get up in front of a class if I'm teaching, and I know Tobias can weigh in on this, where you know you're gonna talk about something that's sort of abstract, sort of counterintuitive, and it's your job for that day to make it so clear that at the end of the class, you know these students get it. And that is just, there's no better payoff, I swear. I'm way more excited about accomplishing that than a 3-piece shot like you guys talked about in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So butterflies are good. Meetings can be really intense. The director can come after you with some really tricky questions. And guess what? It's okay to say you don't know. Don't bullshit your way through it. If you don't know, say you don't know. And when I hear that there's 2 things that I like to hear from my filmmaker colleagues, and that is, I don't know, or I need help. You can't fake it. And if you try, you're gonna get caught. You will. What else?
Okay, Ryan, I think was next. Yeah.
Hi, when you get hired to work with the second unit crew, do they already have like planned out what parts of the movie you'll be filming, or is that something that develops as the production goes on?
Yeah, no, well, yes to both questions. And they wouldn't hire me as a second unit crew member if they didn't know that some of the movie was going to be shot with that unit. And each of the assignments is different. Sometimes it's just empty plates where they're going to add CG things to, or sometimes it's stunt stuff with explosions and car crashes. And sometimes if they get behind schedule, they'll send you the actor and you'll help finish up the scene. So I can't say that any one of my second unit experiences has been identical or even very similar. Probably the animal movies would be the most similar because you know that you've got certain problems that are inherent in shooting animals and dealing with trainers and thinking on your feet if the animal isn't up to the task, or getting to the bottom of the expectations not only of the storyboard and the script, which I work from, but whether the animal trainers have been truthful in preparing their animal actor for what was expected or even promised. So all of those movies have similar themes as far as being very difficult to do and just so tedious, it just makes you crazy. And I married an animal trainer, so it's a very, very good one. She trained the mouse in the Green Mile. So makes me jingles. Her name is Betty Vargo. But anyway, I can go on and on about that. But yes, they do know that they're going to be a second unit, and more often than not, if you're doing a good job, you get more work rather than less by the end of the project.
Perfect. There's a question over there. Yes.
Hey, as someone who's seen the transition of technology through cinema, what do you feel about the upcoming technologies like robotics in the field of cinema? What do you think they'll be like and how they'll transform? I know Gravity used some of them. And
Hey Tobias, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was, how do you feel about new technology since you've seen so much changes over the last decades and different kinds of technologies? What do you feel about new things like robotics that was on Gravity, for example, or is there any other things that
projection mapping?
Like any other projects that you're interested in technologically?
Oh, I embrace it all. Although I'm not an equipment person and I don't really care what camera I shoot with because the story is what's most important to me. And as long as these new pieces of equipment, robotics, gravity techniques, blue screen, green screen, wire work, what have you, support the story and make it better, as in the case of Gravity, then I'm all for it. But if it's just tools and gags and gimmicks for gimmick's sake, then I've done enough of those shots to last 2 lifetimes. And it was one of the reasons why I got out of visual effects when I was really just a little bit older than you all, and that is, the shots were starting to be more about the shots themselves instead of a piece of grammar in a sentence in a screenplay that advances the story. It's, in other words, it started to become gratuitous, and to me, that's either a sign of poor writing, poor directing, or just sort of self-indulgence, and all 3 of those things I just despise. So that's, I mean, typically, all things being equal, it's the director and the story that are most interesting to me. And in the older days when I was doing more visual effects, it was well, what are we gonna do to push the envelope on this movie? And I've had some of those experiences, which were great. So, what else?
Okay, question from right here.
Hi, also I want to apologize, I have to leave because I have rehearsal. But, my questions are, one, what was your, if you have a favorite, what was like your favorite thing to do and like why, or if it was difficult or whatever? And then 2, when you're using something like a crane operated camera, are you controlling it with like a little like thing, or is it a computer program? Because I know like you were credited as like being the cinematographer on that shot. So were you, like, how are you, it's not like you're actually holding the camera. What does that mean when you're being a cinematographer or something that's shot with a crane?
Well, all cranes that don't have people on them, and I grew up in an era where you usually rode the crane, but in the case of Technocranes, it can only support about 200 pounds, which is batteries, lenses, cameras, magazines, whatever, accessories. But you can still operate. You know what a gearhead is, right? With 2 wheels on it, where this is pan and this is tilt. So we're electronically connected to those 2 features. And if it's a gyro stabilized head, then there's also a 3rd axis, which is the roll. And you need the roll just because you can set it up to be automatic horizon finding, because being level is very important. In a film, and sometimes if you're doing a wide shot outside in the hills, the bubble on the tripod will say that you're level, but when you look through the eyepiece, it just doesn't feel level. So there's actual level, and then there's level to what's pleasing to your eye. So that's what that roll axis does. So you are operating the shot. Everybody on the crane has got headsets, including the operator, and you give commands. There's a guy that's on the arm, and there's a guy that's on the wheel part. So it's sort of a dance that you work out through lots of rehearsal to get it just right. And the arm swings and goes up and down, and in the case of a Technocrane, it extends and retracts as well.
Right, but how are you controlling it? Are you like pushing it with movements, or is it electronic?
Yes,
Is it like
there are people on it pushing it, and then the in and out is an electronic function. Pan and tilt and roll and zoom and focus and aperture are set remotely at a station where the operator.
So what are you doing?
Well, it depends. I've done. Usually I operate these things, pan and tilt, and design the move.
Okay.
But if I'm directing as well, I usually have a camera operator because I'm busy doing other stuff. So I mean, I can do either. I like to operate. Sometimes we get to the bottom of the shot quicker if I'm just doing it myself. It's just, sometimes it's just easier to jump on and do it. And also sometimes late in the day, if I need a shot in the arm adrenaline-wise, I'll jump on the camera and do some operating just to get sort of excited and focus up and things. So, so that's the crane. And then what was the second question?
The first question was, what was your favorite thing to shoot, or like the most difficult, or something like that?
Well, yeah.
One of your favorites. I'm assuming you have a lot of favorites.
Well, I think that Planet of the Apes shot was pretty cool. I mean, that's one of my.
So did you operate that?
Huh?
Did you operate that?
I did not operate that. I was directing that shot. and I'm not a Steadicam guy either. But I talked them through the move, and I had one of the best operators in Canada working on it, so that was a really great thing. And it freed my mind up to look at the shot in total. Is it making sense, rather than worrying about the mechanics of panning and tilting in a very tightly choreographed move. So operating and being a DP are two different mindsets altogether. So, yeah, no, I had Dave operate that. And, but I must say, almost on every film that I work on, there's a favorite moment in it. There's not one particular favorite film that I've ever worked on. I certainly have my least favorite. And so in a way, you could consider that I'm really lucky to have had that many positives as opposed to that many negatives, and that many opportunities to do some really groundbreaking work. There's the opening scene in Poseidon is a very complicated thing that we did, and that is it's an entire CG ship, and you fly in a la helicopter and pick up Josh Lucas running on a green screen deck, and it matches the ship, and it's really, really great. So Tobias, if you ever can get the DVD of Poseidon, show them that opening scene.
Sounds great. I'll write that down.
Yeah, that was another one that and all of that underwater work. I'd never done underwater work before, so I was real proud of that. So, yeah, I mean, there used to be favorites of this and that, but after 65 films, it's like you sort of start to forget some of it.
Mark, do you have time for 2 more questions?
Sure.
Yeah. Sounds great. So we had one over here and one over there. Yeah.
Mine's kind of like,
Sorry?
mine's kind of like a 2-part question. Do you ever feel anxious at all when you're not on set or when you don't have work, and when you aren't, and when you are in that phase and you don't have work, what are you usually doing?
Well, I usually work on my tutorials. There's always stuff to do at home. I have a teenage daughter who's active in volleyball and taekwondo. I finally, it took me many years to realize that the benefits of not working is that I'm at home with my family and resting up for the next one. And that might be part of the process of my enthusiasm for work. First of all, I consider it a privilege to work in the film business. And some of the coolest things I've ever done have been because of working in the film business. And as long as I have my health and my motivation, I certainly have my creative juices still, then I'm going to continue to do it. Now, there's a reason why people retire from normal jobs after 20 years, and that's because they do it every day. And they in the end might end up having more hours at their job than I will when I'm 70. And that's because some years I'll work 8 or 9 months, and some years I'll work 3 months. And if it's a job that's got the directing and the shooting, well, then I can make enough money in 3 months to last a year or more. So I used to get very anxious when I didn't really have a family, or I didn't have this desire to share what I know. And I mean, you would just start to think, well, what did I do wrong? I mean, why am I just had a movie that was a success, and so you start having all this self-doubt, and in fact it's very toxic and in many ways corrosive and bad for your health. So yes, I'm like anybody else, and then all of a sudden you'll get a call and you'll be working for the next 6 months. It's not an easy thing to do, and it cost me my first marriage. But if you can hang in there and just dedicate yourself to the knowledge that you know you're going to succeed, and that's all anybody can do, then I'm saying you will. And listen, you've got so many outlets now. You've got the web, and there's web series and web movies, and it's cheaper than ever to make your reel. You can cut it on your Apple. You've got contacts through social media that are just going to help you network. And this film school that you're going to with a young cameraman like Tobias, I mean, what do you think? It's a pretty fun thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Casey had another question.
Yeah, I'm good.
So this
When
is
is this class over?
The class itself is over at 6, but
Okay. Well, if you'll have me, I'll stay till the end of it.
Hey! Fantastic.
so
So this is particularly about the Rise of the Planet of the Apes shots in your reel. What would you say the biggest difference is between like shooting normal scenes with actors and shooting scenes where like they're going to be creatures or whatever added in using CGI and like in post-processing? Like what's different about the lighting and like preparations that you have to do for it?
Well, the idea here is that if there's two units working, that as a second unit guy, well, first of all, as a first unit guy, you want to hire a second unit guy who's not making his own movie, okay? Who's not shooting shots that don't fit with the visual style, the lens choice, the key to fill ratio, all of those things. Handheld versus dolly moves, Steadicam versus tripod moves. So the idea here at the end of the movie is even if I shot half the movie as a second unit guy, you want it to feel like the same movie, okay? So you plan very carefully with the first unit team. You watch all of their dailies. You ask, I mean, you just have to be in the pocket of the first unit guy as far as filtration, lens height, what sort of image, what sort of emotion are we going to convey using wide lenses up close as opposed to long lenses farther away. All of those sort of psychological, are we going to Dutch the camera a little bit? Are we going to do subtle zooms or subtle push-ins? I mean, all of these things create a different emotion. And in order for it to seem like it's the same team doing the entire movie, you've got to master those little things that your first unit guy has done. Now, I've shot for some of the best DPs in the world, and that's only helped me because I can match anybody's work. And through all of those different lighting schemes, from John Seal to Caleb Deschanel, all of these great guys, John Bailey, just Russell Boyd, and some of them are better at certain things than others. The Australians tend to be really great outside because they didn't really have sound stages until the 70s. So they have a certain knack for picking the right locations and shooting at the right time of day, which are the two most important things to learn to master if you're an exterior person. So it's the short version is you prep very closely with the first unit person, and you don't do anything outside of that template of color, lens choice, lighting design, and camera movement. So that's the job of a good second unit DP, and not to come up with shots that you think are cool that don't make a lick of sense for the movie just because you're shooting something for your reel. That I can sniff that out in 5 minutes. So.
Thanks. Who else had a question? Left. Both will already here. Haley. First and then Ryan.
When you first get hired for a gig or a project, do you tend to bring the same people with you as a team, or is it all new people that you're working with?
Well, if I'm shooting outside of the country, I don't usually. Well, it depends. If it's a first unit job, then I'll usually, if I'm outside the U.S., like in Europe or something, I might be able to bring one person, and it's always a question as to who that is. I bet you won't know the answer to this, and nor should you. And I didn't know it either until about 15 years ago. And that is, if I'm allowed to bring one person, okay, I'll give you the choices that my most key people on the set working with me would be the key grip, the gaffer, camera operator, or a focus puller. Of those four, if I can only get one, who would be the person I would take?
A focus puller.
That's right. That's right. It sounds to me like you guys have started to get into focus pull. Yeah. And then, okay, who would be the second person?
Gaffer.
Probably the gaffer.
Gaffer,
Yeah, because now you've got your guys that are control of focus, which to me is as important an aspect of the shot as the lens that you choose. And then you've got a guy that's going to make sure that the lighting that we have in mind is going to be executed. Like in Bulgaria, nobody speaks any English, and it's sort of a rough group of guys that might have been doing something completely different a year earlier. And in in Bulgaria, this means no. But they've shot enough movies to know that, well, here's what I learned. I learned, for the dolly, I learned the words up and down, and fast and slow, and left and right. I don't remember them now. And so we could get shots done that. So that was, but that's part of the beauty of working elsewhere is the downside is that you're training up people that will take your job one day, or take your job one day. But the upside is the cultural experience of working with people that know enough about the vernacular of film, because it's a worldwide art form now. And so that's interesting from a cultural standpoint to communicate without actually speaking English. It's a real challenge.
Okay, with the question to Ryan.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could say what it was like working with Wally Pfister on Transcendence.
I'm sorry, I just got a message and I was distracted.
I was wondering if you could talk about working with Wally Pfister on Transcendence, because I think that was his first directing job, right?
Yeah, I honestly can't say very much about that
Yeah, I
experience.
figured.
But I will say that he did a very, very good job, and he's been directing a lot of commercials over the last few years when he's not working with Chris Nolan. And then if you're see, there's a reason why we're called directors of photography, because there's so much directing in photography. And it isn't just creative choices that we make, it's directing a lot of people on a crew. Big movies have big crews, small movies have small crews, and you're directing the sort of the templates of the look, like the locations that you choose, what's the first shot of the day, what's your second shot, and then once you establish that based on, and then sometimes you throw the entire plan out because the actor's late, you've got to start on something else. So there's a lot of directing there, and Wally, of course, working with Chris Nolan, who I find to be an exceptional director, kind of a low-key, hands-off. His skill is getting the right production designer, the right DP, the right story, of course, that he's written. And casting is so important. So Wally's been rubbing elbows with people that know how to do it really well since Memento. And I might add, working with me for a few years didn't hurt him at all. So it's not as, if you can get a team around you, there's a reason why the only job in the film business where you don't have to have any prior experience as a director is because you can surround yourself with everybody that's good, and they will not let you fail. They just won't. Unless you're a jerk and an arrogant prick, and then they will. But and I worked for those guys too. But Wally has enough experience so that he doesn't fit the definition of a first-time director for me. He just doesn't. So the movie, I've seen the movie. It's really good. It's not what you think it is, and I only hope that it does really well for him, because Hollywood's brutal these days. You don't come out of the gate with a hit. It may be a long time before you work on anything decent again. Yeah, in the front there.
Yeah, so this is kind of a random question. I actually really want to direct, and I've been making a bunch of shorts, and this is kind of what this class is also about. But how do you actually get traction to actually go from short films to feature?
Well, you win an Academy Award for a short film. Right? I mean, you need to be in film festivals, you need to show up, you need to shoot as much as you can, you need to gravitate towards people that you think might be able to help you, not just from a business sense, but as a crew member sense. And how old are you?
I'm 24.
Okay, well, 24. Listen, I don't think anybody's a decent director until they're 40, and it's even better to have a kid. So you've got, it doesn't mean that you won't direct, because you will. But there's a certain amount of wisdom that's involved in directing that I don't care how bright you are, you're not going to have until you have more life experiences. You've visited more places, you've read more books, you've seen more movies, you've met more people. All those things add up to a creative vision that's constantly evolving, and in most cases evolving for the better. So my advice to you is don't be impatient. Okay?
Make my shorts.
Julian.
wonder if you could go ahead and speak about some experiences you've had where that's worked in your favor.
I firmly believe that half of the process is just having a decent personality, be fair with people, don't lie, get along, encourage, motivate, applaud, support in every way that you can possible. Not only is that a great karmic sort of thing, but there's a sort of, I don't know, there's a benevolence to being, you're in charge. You're basically a film director or a DP is a benevolent dictator because we can just, we just rule them around all day. And some people have the reputation of being really rough and tough and nobody likes to work for them. And then the other people, like the very best directors I've worked with in my career have been the nicest guys. So I say that ethically, ethics is a really good way. Now, you had a class about film ethics, or was it just a discussion?
One of our classes in here, one of the discussions we had.
One of Tobias's lectures.
So one 2-hour lecture was all about this.
Okay. Well, what is your instinct about that? I mean, it's no different than any other business where there's a boss and a person that's working. The film business is no exception to that. And in many ways, it should be more of one because if you're on location with a bunch of your friends, you're living with them too. They become your family. So treat them like your family.
Other question. Yes, Ryan, over there.
I understand that like a film might take like a couple months or like a year or so, like even more. But like, how do you? Is there like a consistent income that allows you to like feed yourself and like live?
There's a big squeak of a chair, and I think the most important part of that question.
Can you repeat it?
Since like the process of filmmaking takes so long, is there a consistent income that allows you to feed yourself and like live?
While I'm making the film, or when I'm not making the film?
Both.
Well, yeah, no, you get living allowance. It depends. If I'm shooting in Los Angeles, I have to work as a local. But anywhere else in the country, they put you up, they give you money for food, and they'll give you a car. So it's not like you're going out of pocket for anything. Not only that, they'll feed you breakfast and lunch at work. So really, all you have to do is buy your beers and dinner after work, and that's it. And you're too tired to do anything else, so there's no, it's really a drag, because I've been to some pretty cool places in the world, but I've been so busy working that I never really thought that I saw it. So, unless you're working on, let's say, a money loser for me would be to come to LA, work for a very poor rate, have no luck staying with people that I know, and I certainly have for a hotel down here for weeks and weeks at a time. But that's really the exception to the rule. You're actually, it's in a producer's interest to keep you healthy and happy, because we just perform so much better that way. So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
So that's why this class is something that's important to me.
Well, the place that I teach occasionally doesn't have a lot of great equipment. They have enough to support 4 or 5 crews in a senior class, but beyond the equipment thing, which I don't, like I mentioned earlier, it's not that big a deal for me. It's the experience of working together and delegating the key jobs, that is designer, locations, camera, directing, and what have you, and oftentimes they act in it as well. And it's, aside from the equipment, it's that communal experience that's so important, because you soon learn that as bright as you are, with the greatest ideas ever, you can't do this by yourself. You just can't. Hard way, early on when I was starting to hire my friends to help me out on stuff like that, and the difference between a friendship and a professional colleague is light years apart. So you learn more about yourself, you learn more about your friends, and you learn more about the dedication, because if you've got 4 rowers in the boat and one's going way harder than everybody else, that boat's not going to go in a straight line. So you got to match up with people's intensity, their focus, and their dedication, and hope that And in addition to that enthusiasm, which is so very important, they bring a modicum of talent to the table. Then you're going to do well. You'll always end up creating more than the sum of the parts that way. You cannot create less than the sum of the parts. That's just unacceptable.
Totally agree. Yeah, that's basically what I hope to do here with those group exercises and matching up people that don't know each other. So you get to know new people, and that's what you do in every new set, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of like understanding what it means like to work with new people that you've never experienced before, their personalities or their likes or their strengths.
Well, if this semester goes until when? The middle of December?
Yes.
If I come down to the Bay Area, can I stop by and meet you guys in person?
Oh, that would be awesome. Great. Absolutely.
That would be. There's some exercises that you can do that are really beneficial that don't involve any equipment at all. And I would say one thing that you can do that's really fun and a mind teaser and really valuable is work out a scene, just to work out the blocking of a scene in a classroom. You know, where's the first shot? Where's the coverage? How do you maintain the line? And is there a master? Do you need a master? I mean, just as if you had a camera, do a shot list and then walk through them.
That's a great idea. I'm gonna make that one of the assignments. Yes.
Yeah. Because everybody thinks that a cinematographer is just a guy that either knows how to run a camera or is in control of the light. But in fact, the photography aspect of cinematography, or being a director of photography, is just a subset of the entire process of working with the director, interpreting the story, being close with the production designer. You're also a personnel director because you hire the key people. You're also sort of the big brother of the group if there's a problem within your family. And then you've got responsibilities in post-production as far as maintaining the look of the project. And if the editor gets into a jam, you need to know that there's a shot there that they haven't found that would make the whole scene cut together. So know that a DP's job is I'm most relaxed on set because that's the easiest part of my job, honestly. So it's a really cool thing to be. I didn't start out with this as a goal. I sort of gravitated towards it. You guys might think that you want to be in sound, but you actually might end up being a production designer, or if you're an editor, you might end up being a director or a writer. So keep your mind open. There's a lot of really neat things that you can do. And when I get finished with my grip tutorial, I'll send it to Tobias, and you can see everything that a grip does. And it may sound like a blue-collar job, but with all of those new pieces of equipment and machines, as the student in the back mentioned, along the lines of robotics, you can execute shots safer and faster and in a more thrilling way by just being a grip. So look for that soon, Tobias, okay?
I already saw the preview that you posted, and it's awesome. It's totally like I've never seen anything like it, so I'm gonna make sure to share it with everybody.
Okay. Well, listen, I know it's getting time to go home. Thank you so much for inviting me into your classroom today. I really